Hi, my name is April. I'm 51 years old and I recently gave up everything to live full time in a camper. Now, I'm no stranger to camping. In fact, it was the only vacation I could actually afford, raising a child as a single mother. I have traveled coast to coast, car camping, tent camping, backpacking, but living in a camper has been a whole different story, especially since there's no home base and there's no end date. So today I'm going to tell you about all the things that I had to learn about living in a camper, and stay tuned till the end for a book recommendation. I'd like to say the biggest issue is making my morning coffee, but because I like my coffee from a French press, it's pretty easy to make. I'd also like to say the biggest issue is cooking nutritious food while I'm on the road. And while I don't cook with the freshest ingredients because I'm not currently using my refrigerator, that hasn't necessarily been an issue. By far, the biggest issue that I've had so far is with parking. When I first started living in the camper, I stuck to about a 10-mile radius around my old apartment. I had lived in that apartment for 7 years and I was pretty familiar with where people had been parking overnight. And so I kind of stuck to those areas that I thought were safe, generally parking lots in local establishments and nearby parks. And during the day, I was going to parks where I thought I could legally park for the day. It wasn't until my third week in that I started to have problems. So after about the second week, there were two different nights where I was parked in a parking lot, and right about the time of dark, a bunch of teenagers, young adults, showed up with their noisy cars, and they just crowded the parking lot around the people who were parked there for the evening. They were setting off fireworks and being noisy, which, whatever. But I think my biggest fear with that was they were going to attract police, and I definitely did not want to get chased away by police. So during the day, I would find a place to park and work. There was one day where I was parked in like an empty mall lot. The mall closest to my old place was basically abandoned. Only a few stores were open, and they have tons of parking. So I parked there and I put my solar power out. It was getting to be in the evening, probably around 6:30, 7 o'clock, and a security officer pulled up, and he was really nice. I stepped out and he goes, "Oh, you look like a nice person." He said, "Usually it's, people who he suspects are druggies, dirty men or whatever." So when I stepped out, he was like, "Oh, I was going to chase you away, but you look like a nice person. And if you want to just stick around, I'm here until 11. I won't bother you." And I hadn't planned on staying there until 11 at night, but I did leave. The next day, I parked at in another parking lot around kind of to the side of an abandoned store. It was like a whole strip mall that was basically abandoned. And I was getting ready to leave. I was brushing my hair, and a cop car pulled up right next to my big window. And I looked out and I was nice, "Hey, how's it going?" He's like, "Yeah, we can't have any RVs or campers overnight here in this parking lot." And he was super nice. I said, "Yeah, I'm getting ready to leave. Sorry." He's like, "No big deal. Just thought I'd let you know." So I left, and then the very next morning, I was late, and I'll tell you why later, but I was late getting out of the parking lot where I was normally staying. It was a Christian bookstore. There were two campers, a bus, two truck campers, several vans, and a bunch of cars. And it's where I had been staying pretty regularly overnight. I felt comfortable there. I felt safe in numbers. And I was getting ready to pack up, and I heard somebody on a loudspeaker, and it turned out it was a cop car. And that was the last straw for me. I had been sticking around in Denver so that I could get comfortable driving the camper in an area that I was familiar with. But after that incident, because that brought me to tears, I was scared to death after that. That was the motivation that I needed to get out of Denver. So that night I drove an hour north where there was a Cabela's, because apparently you can park overnight at like Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's and Home Depots and Walmarts, which, you know, that's all changing now. I think too many people ruined it for the rest of us. But I drove up there. It was after dark when I got there. I parked overnight. And then the next morning I woke up because there were many other campers in the parking lot, but there was a clearly visible sign in the daylight that said no overnight parking. So, you know, finding overnight parking with a camper is much more challenging than I expected it would be, because even 10 years ago when I was camping a lot over the summers when I was teaching, I never had such a hard time finding a place to camp overnight. So I had to get on Campendium and start looking at dispersed campsites where I could stay for free, and it was legal. The problem is that these places are hard to find. They're usually on back roads, which are difficult to get to. And last night I stayed at one. I had hoped to stay here for a few days, but I cannot get the camper level enough, and it is seriously hurting my back. So I guess I'm gonna have to pull out again. So parking has definitely been the biggest issue by far. So listen, y'all, I knew that it was going to be a challenge learning how to drive with the camper on the back of the truck. I just didn't realize how terrifying it would be to drive it at speeds over 50 miles an hour. That's why I kind of stayed in Denver for a while, learning how to drive with the camper on the back. And then I did have to take a major highway south Colorado to get to some BLM land. And I tried to drive in the middle of the night when there would be less traffic, because people are very busy and important these days.
The world went and got itself in a big damn hurry.
They go 20 miles over the speed limit, and they have no patience for anyone who's trying to be safe and take it slow. And it's not just about driving it fast. It's about the change in air pressure being passed by other vehicles, specifically semis, or driving on ridges where there's a crosswind. Both of those things cause the camper to sway, and it actually moves my entire truck back and forth, and it scares me. I white knuckle it the whole way. So I do try to drive during times when there's not a lot of traffic on the road. And when I do drive under the speed limit, 5 to 10 miles under the speed limit, specifically on roads where there's more than one lane so people can easily pass me. And if I am driving on a 2-lane road where people can't easily pass me, if people line up behind me, I'll just pull over and let them pass. I am not going to put my safety at risk because somebody is too busy to drive the speed limit. And I found that even on really washed out roads where I'm barely driving 10 miles an hour and my camper is coming apart at the seams in the back, people in large campers and RVs are driving 10, 15, 20 miles over the speed limit, over these washboard roads. I'm surprised the teeth haven't shaken out of their head. And I don't understand how they can do that and not shake their shit apart, because there was the first campsite that I went to outside of Denver. It was 17 miles of washboarded roads, and I had no idea how bad the roads were going to be. I didn't see any warnings online, and it was bad. When I finally got to the campsite, my camper floor was just littered with bolts and screws. Cabinet doors had come off. I don't know how anybody could drive those roads as fast as they were going, and I'm not going to, even if somebody is impatient behind me. I'm just glad that I've been in one place for a while that I haven't had to drive, because driving has been super scary. So another issue that I've had to deal with since living in the camper is learning how all this equipment works. In my last video, I mentioned that I'm not using the propane, and I have no intentions of using the propane whatsoever. It's just my personal preference. Judge me if you want to, I don't care. I'm not trying to figure out how the fridge works, and I'm not using the stove inside. I have a little propane burner that I've been using to cook. But about a week into owning the camper, I did a little review of all of the equipment on the outside. I only had the camper for a week before I started living in it, and that week was dedicated to moving out of my apartment and getting the inside of the camper all set up. So a week in, I decided to do a little exploration on the outside of the camper, and I noticed that my battery had been turned on, and I guess I had been driving around with the battery turned on. And I thought, that doesn't make sense. So I went ahead and turned it off. It was in the evening, so I went to bed. And in the morning, I woke up and my truck battery was dead. I couldn't go anywhere, and I was kind of parked off of the main thoroughfare, so there weren't any other vehicles around. Luckily, it was within a couple of miles from my old apartment, and I knew that there was a walking trail nearby that I could go down to Home Depot and get one of those battery boosters. And I used to have one. It was stolen out of my car, so whatever, decided need to get myself a new battery booster. So I went down and I asked the clerks, the people, if I take this to my vehicle, is it going to work or does it need to be charged first? And we did some Googling and we read the package and we didn't get a good answer on it. It says that they are partially charged at purchase. So I thought, well, my vehicle is still acting like it wants to turn over, so maybe it's not completely dead. So I thought, well, I'll just take a chance. And I bought the battery booster and I walked back up to my truck and I tried to jump it and it didn't work. So luckily nearby there was a county maintenance office and there was somebody outside doing work and they had their truck with them. So I walked over and he was really nice and gracious and said that he would come and help me out, and we got my truck running, so that was good. That was all right until the next morning, when the morning of the cop with the loudspeaker. I had gotten up about 6 a.m. and my car wouldn't start again. So luckily I was parked within a mile of a Walmart. So I went ahead and walked the mile down to Walmart and bought a new battery. I don't know if you've ever carried a car battery, but they're very heavy. And I ended up carrying it back from Walmart and changing out my battery, and I had just finished changing out that battery. I was getting ready to leave when that cop car came along. So now I have a brand new battery and I haven't had a problem since, but I also make sure to unplug the 7-pin plug whenever I'm not pulling the camper. So that was my first big issue. The second one was multiple days in a row where it was around 100 degrees and the air conditioning in my truck wasn't working. I guess hauling something heavy puts more of a load on your compressor, so it makes it harder to pump out air conditioning. So I did have to recharge the air conditioner. And then there was another time I was getting ready to move south out of the Denver area, and I decided to get my oil changed. So I stopped to get my oil changed, and it cost me $1,000. I had to get new brakes on the front, and he said he didn't feel comfortable. He showed me a picture. The brakes were almost non-existent. So had to get new brakes and new coolant, the flush and coolant and whatever, plus the oil change. So taking care of my truck has also been an issue with hauling this camper. And then something else that I've had to get used to is leveling the camper. And I didn't realize it for the first couple of weeks that I had it, but there's like stabilizers on the back. So one day I was moving out of my campsite and forgot to lift one of my stabilizers, so that is bent now. It is what it is. I did actually end up renting a campsite for a night and having access to electricity. That's when I learned that my air conditioner didn't work. It was a 100-degree day, and I thought, well, I'll get a campsite and I'll just turn on the air conditioner. Yeah, air conditioner doesn't work. The fans worked though, and it was nice to have lights at night, but it's not necessary when I'm boondocking. I don't even use my battery. When it gets dark, I go to bed. So yeah, learning the camper has been interesting, but I think now I'm 6 weeks in. I think that I've got it all figured out for what I need at this point. And I just want to end this video with a little mention of the recent executive order that is targeting houseless people. And I'm not going to get into everything that the executive order says, and I'm not going to argue with anybody about the repercussions for people like me who are just on an adventure. There's plenty of van life and RVers with YouTube channels who are potential targets of this EO. I just want to say that it is one of the reasons why I'm probably going to end this journey early. I don't need any legal trouble. I don't want to be involuntarily committed because I have chosen an alternative lifestyle. I do have some theories. I won't share them with you here, but I'm just saying that not only am I scared to drive it and I'm having a hard time finding places to park, this EO is just another reason why this journey is going to be cut short. Not only that, but because our economy is pretty shitty right now, my business has tanked by over 60%. It's the worst I have done since I first started my business. It's not even a livable income anymore. And I'm glad that I'm not trying to pay rent under these circumstances. So I have started looking for professional jobs again. The job market is really tough. There are people who have been looking for over a year and haven't found a good job. But every day I am dedicating time, because obviously I don't have any work to keep me busy. I am taking time to do job searches and hopefully relocate outside of Denver and start working again at a real job. So we'll see how that goes. But stay tuned. I got a book review for you. Okay, guys, let's talk about books this week. The second book that I have read on my camper journey was this one, The Book of Longings. And the reason that I picked this book is because it's written by Sue Monk Kidd, who wrote one of my favorite books, which is The Secret Life of Bees. Definitely love that book. It was hard to get into. I didn't really get interested in it until about a third of the way through, but it ended up being one of those books that totally got me in the heart. Towards the end of the book, I was sobbing. Definitely brought out a lot of emotions. It is not what I expected it to be. It is actually a book about the fictional wife of Jesus Christ, and it's based in a lot of history. There's a lot of historical information in here, and I ended up really enjoying it. So if you're somebody that enjoys historical fiction and you're not one of those Christians who gets offended easily by things you find blasphemous, this might be a good book for you. So I got it at the thrift store for $1.50, and that actually was another reason why I picked it. But so good. Check it out. Somebody happened to be outside. Oh, shit. It's a rattler. And while while I was talking, that Rattler disappeared and I have no idea where it went. And it's freaking me out just a little bit.